So to navigate the investment landscape with expert guidance in our next session to gain valuable insights, tips and strategies to secure the funding of the startup so that it thrives and grows, I welcome on stage Subodh, Sachan sir, of course, Director STPI, Ankush Arora, Founder 0522 Axio Tech Private Limited, Aditya Arora, CEO of FaaD, Ankit Machhar, Director Ecosystem WENEN, VNEN, Kalpana Jain, Partner Deloitte, Touche, Tohmatsu, India LLP Chair. So let's welcome everybody, and I'm sorry that I've probably missed out. So over to you, Kalpana ma'am.
Can you hear me? I guess you can. A very good afternoon to all of you. I do notice more empty chairs than I would have liked to see, but I'm assuming that those who are here out of much more interest and enthusiasm for what we are going to be discussing. We are going to be talking about insights which would be valuable for navigating the investment landscape. We've been hearing, that actually, there are two views that I hear about investments in startups here in India. For the last 2 or 3 years, we used to hear there's huge amount of funds available. There is no dearth of funds available. It's just to make sure that you get the right kind of investor and you approach the right kind of, fund for yourself. But I have to say that since the peak that we saw at $27 billion in 2021, it dropped to $21 billion, I think, or 22 perhaps. And this year, it's dropped for the 3 quarters. In 2023, it's dropped to $7 billion. So it's a question mark, and perhaps that will be how I will start out the discussion with the very interesting panel which I have here. But before I go to the questions, ladies and gentlemen, more ladies should be here is my belief, but unfortunately only so many. The panel that I have along with me today represents people from the ecosystem, those who push, pull, help you get ready to be that entrepreneur who's successful, who's good enough to get to funding and then take it to the next level thereafter. And that would really be Ankit from Vadvani, Ankit from Vadvani Foundation, who's here. So he's our ecosystem facilitator, if I can call him that. I had a long chat with him just before we came in, and it's very interesting work that they're doing. A lot of it in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. They work on skilling, they work on innovation, and they work on entrepreneurship. So he will be the ecosystem guy whom you don't have to be scared of at all. He's going to be the facilitator in getting us to the funding point and success in the same. I have here sitting next to me Ankit, who, I've got them all wrong, sorry, Aditya. Aditya is from FaaD, which is a startup fund. They have invested, they have a fund size of $40 million, have invested in about 80 startups. Some of the ones that you would know, that I knew, Blue Smart, very, very need of the hour and very well executed, no longer startup, I would call it. Battery Smart, Kerala banana chips. When he told me about Kerala banana chips, I told him, I said, my son gets a packet every single day. They're really, really good. I can assure you of that. But those are some of his investments. So here's a fund again. You have somebody whom perhaps we need to be a little scared of, who will tell us about what is it that we need to do in today's environment going forward from the point of view of raising funds. Then last but not the least, I have Ankush. Ankush is from #Bazaar. which has been, again, an entrepreneur. So he'll tell you about all the secrets in terms of being able to raise capital. What is it that you need to do? This is a B2B buying, platform, which started with FMCG and now is expanding to home decor. He does one more entrepreneurial setup, and he'll be a serial entrepreneur. This is his second one. First one he successfully sold. So you will have some interesting insights to be had from him. And last but not the least, perhaps the most, I have Subodh sitting right alongside with me. He's a director at the Startup and Innovation, for Startup and Innovation at STPI, and the architect for this whole program that we've had since the morning. So let me start out by, perhaps asking, maybe I should start with you, because you are the architect of, STPI has a purpose, and it's delivering that. So tell me what you feel, Subodh, about the current investment landscape. And I would like you to throw light on this little bit of sense of doom that it's slowed down, it's come down, it's not as exciting as it was in 21. Perhaps you could address that a little bit for our aspiring and existing entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Kalpana. And thank you, for the audience who has stayed with us throughout the day. We had a great sessions, and this is just the beginning about what Leap Ahead Summit is all about. And thank you for all the distinguished speakers on the dais. Yes, 2021 was the defining moment for the startup ecosystem in India. The journey of, from the perspective of investment-driven pull, which I've been talking about, because I have been associated with the startup ecosystem since 2011, and we had seen the momentum, growing slowly and slowly. And I think 2021 was a kind of defining moment, though it came within the midst of all what was happening in terms of pandemic. But the funding ecosystem was long overdue in terms of investors literally releasing the purse. I think that's what happened in 2021. 2022 has seen what we see as a downturn right now, and 2023 is definitely a funding winter in that sense. But what has happened is it has given a huge impetus and huge has built up to the startup ecosystem altogether. Today, the startup ecosystem is, yes, looking forward for the investment, but there is also a lot of innovation, passion, and energy which is already there in the various cities and the locations which we have been looking into. We have realized that there is a funding, investors are looking for, probably taking some time to release their investments, and probably becoming more risk, I'll say, not so taking risks right now. And that's where government comes into play, right? And that's where we, within STPI, has come into play. When we started NGIS, we saw obviously good number of startups participating. But what we also realized that, that when we look for funding and where is the gap between investors coming in and what startups and innovators are really all about, right? And that's the gap which we started filling in within the NGIS. And then what we have done in last 1.5 years within NGIS has paved the way. Today we saw 20 startups getting funded from NGIS. And it's just not that they have been identified yesterday. They've identified 6 months back, 8 months back. They've been mentored. They have been talked about in terms of what investors are looking forward to, right? And how do you literally get money when we talk about investment coming into your startups? What we have done within the NGIS also, Kalpana ji, we have always taken the investors' approach in terms of investing into startups. We heard in the morning session that the grants are something which are not money which startups should be looking forward to. I have always been kind of against the grant money. Grants are very easy money, let me tell you. And a lot of startups and founders, they run behind the grants. What really happens is like the more noise gets created than the actual content which can be filtered out, right? And that's what we looked into NGIS. I have heard a lot of startups coming and saying, hey, we got selected. In fact, I just met somebody here in the morning. We were 6 in the selection round. We've not got the funding. I said, the funding is something which will come to you. You know, to be patient enough. The investors are there. This is investor-driven program. Investors are going to release money. Obviously, when we nudge from the government perspective in terms of giving the funds and access to the fund to the startups, our objective is to accelerate that, right? And we are doing that. But sometimes it's the right time of the investment. No idea is bad. no implementation is bad. It's just about the right time of getting investment. That's when you should look forward to. And grants, again, is not the right front. I think I'll talk more about what can happen, but I leave it to Kalpana ji, back to you.
Subodh, there's one point I'd like to add to what you said. I mean, I've been part of the developing startup ecosystem for the last 25 years. And earlier, when we used to have events like this in Delhi, in a hotel like this one, we would see a lot of startups. Number one, the number of people would be less. Number two, the people who would be here would be mostly from Delhi and the Delhi-NCR region, for example, if we were doing it in Delhi. Today, if we look at the mix of the audience, I think what is really, really commendable is the deepening and the widening of the, of the ecosystem. Whether it is the startups who are coming from other cities, smaller cities, towns, even rural areas, or equally interestingly, it is the investors who are originating and are based out of, smaller places than the large metropolitan cities. So on that note, I'm going to come to you, Ankit. You did mention that you are working with tier 2, tier 3, startups coming from there. So it'd be refreshing to hear about your perspective in terms of what the investment landscape looks like now and going forward.
Thanks, Kalpana. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. So, first of a quick introduction from where I come from in terms of working in the startup ecosystem. We've been working with large-scale, early-stage startups, and that's where the entire ecosystem in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities require that support. Through Foundation, we have a program that we work with various channel partners and support prototype and MVP stage startups to get them to launch ready and help them navigate in their entire journey to be able to go out and pitch to funding agencies, investment partners. Couple of areas that we work, and that's also aligned to the topic that we have. So we've identified 8 topics where a startup need to focus. Of course, the committed team, business model, value prop, whether it is a vitamin business or it's a painkiller business, financial stability or the projections, your matrix, growth plan, funding plan, and the exit and all. We work on those couple of areas with them because we definitely can't help on the team side, but help on business model, help them on financials, funding plan, how do you pitch, how do you present. If those 4-5 objectives are aligned, they're better prepared to go and pitch. And when we are seeing this, working with now 1,500 startups over the last this year, 120 startups raising funds, we are not seeing any dearth in terms of investments as far as early stage investments are concerned. And whether it is government grants or early stage investors like Aditya and others, where they're spending the commercial funding anywhere between $50,000 to $150,000. And we are seeing a lot such funds getting created, SEBI approved, available now, and they're looking for real startups. If they're able to navigate on these 8 areas that investors look for, come out with not only from an innovation product perspective, but from a business perspective, and then pitch to them. And we are not seeing any such dearth in terms of slowdown. There was a slowdown in the first half of this year because of various reasons. But now that I'm reading more and more and getting these startups connected, we are seeing again a spurt, and then 2024 is going to be another change. We had first change in 2016-17 with the entire movement. 2021 was another big one, and now we'll see 2024-25 as well.
Thank you. That's good news, isn't it? There's nothing that much to worry about. And actually, I'll add to that again. There is, I think, and I'll come to you, Aditya, on that. I think there is a deepening of the investing environment from the point of view that you're seeing a lot of domestic interest in investment. Again, if we were looking at it 5 to 10 years ago, the domestic interest, the interest of investors originating out of India itself to invest in the country were less. So maybe, Aditya, if I can move to you with a question on how do you see, the evolution of our domestic investing environment, since you are a fund which has, committed itself to the domestic market. Perhaps your views would be valuable to know.
Sure. I think this question has changed shapes and forms over the last so many years because angel investing is now democratized. Firstly, I think the revolution that came was from, of course, government, where they defined who an angel investor actually is. Right, in terms of net worth, now you clearly have that person should have a net worth of more than 2 crores, excluding the primary residence, right? So A is the definition of angel investing that came in. Second is, I think, what revolutionizes a lot of angel funds were created post 2019 because SEBI came up with a different category structure under category 1, where category 1 was just VC funds, but SEBI said, no, we want to attract the growing angel community interest as well. So let's create category 1, and inside that category, let's create a subcategory A called angel funds, which we also applied for and of course got the license. So, A is that of course more clarity has come in from government side that has of course pushed the democratization of angel investment platforms even further. I think second is the whole awareness and education about angel investing. I see so many people, of course, even in fact sharing a cute moment. A student studying in school saw an episode of Shark Tank and sort of messaged me, भैया मुझे startup बहुत अच्छा लगा, मुझे invest करना है. तो मैंने कहा आप पैसे कैसे लेके आओगे इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए? कहते भैया मेरे को पॉकेट मनी मिलती है हर महीने, उसकी एक EMI बांध देना, आप इन्वेस्ट करते रहो. तो
Crowdsourcing.
So you see, there is such an active interest between people because of some of these popular shows that have come up, and people of course want to invest in startups even more now, right? Because this is an asset class which has generated interest. The third thing where of course angel investing as a platform and of course early stage investing as a platform kind of grew multi-bounds is when Zomato got listed. Because that's when people eventually saw that you can invest in startup and make money as well, right? Because earlier startup investing used to be a big daddy's game, right? Where of course deals were happening behind closed doors. But now you see an Indian startup a tech-led startup going out there and then funding, and then a slew of course, startup IPOs that came after with the likes of Paytm, with the likes of course, so many, of course, not commenting on Mama Earth. So essentially, I think that is of course also how it happened in terms of the interest. Last point that I want to make is a lot of road shows that have happened. If you look at the last 2.5 years, the number of road shows which have happened in terms of physical networks like us and many others in the country, and even in fact VC funds as well, setting up regional offices, going and interacting with the local community there, right, attracting local interest from there. I mean, we are planning an investor event in a small city called Bhilwara, right? Now imagine that it's in Bhilwara and about 25 investors are turning up on an event on a Saturday morning to invest in startups. So that is another sort of on-ground work and penetration that has happened with a lot of these platforms and of course STPIs and of course other bodies as well which have done local roadshows. I think that is also a testament of the local interest. Yeah.
Okay, Ankush, I think the interest to hear from you, and we'll change the gears a little bit. We talked about how there has been a little bit of slowdown, at least observed in terms of the overall investment, and I stand corrected by Ankit. He says that at the angel investment at the startup early stage, there is no dearth of funding. So that's good news for sure. But I want to talk to you, and when we were talking earlier, you talked about having raised capital 3 months ago and a little before that. Can we talk about valuations? And I know in 21 we saw some fantastic valuations happen. You know, they were like through the roof. As Subodh is raising his hand, I realized I should do that too. So they were very, very high valuations. I actually want to ask you 2 questions. Question number 1, what do you think about valuations which are over the top? You know, and question number 2, what does it do to founders? What does it do to startups to start out with a very high valuation? What are so really I'm asking you the risks and the troubles and the concerns and the anxieties that come with a very high valuation. So over to you, Ankush.
Thank you,
Let's
thank
hear
you,
from you.
thank you, Kalpana, for having me here. Thank you, STPI, Contact, for having me here. That's a wonderful question, and I would like to go the last one first. Sometimes it just so happens while we are basically toying around with that idea in our head, brainstorming it with the team, taking it out to the market, creating that proof of concept, riding it along, we forget that there could be so much beyond that one small little idea. So to begin with, we value ourselves less. And that's what beautifully the Western part of the world has been doing. They, from day zero, value themselves at a very top notch, and they have a data set to back that up. We just have words, right? I'll give you an example here, Kalpana. This was my first startup when I came back from US. So I saw student housing a great problem in India back in 2015 and 16. And I started up from a small tier 2 town where nobody was watching me. That was Lucknow. I established a proof of concept. I said, yeah, this is working well. I came to Noida. I said, now is the time to show the world that something can be done about it. And immediately we got incubated at Amity University. And one of the Chauhans invested in us. We sold around 1,000 beds in just 3 months' time. And the best part of that business was that the parent used to pay upfront for the entire academic year for the accommodation. So we were cash rich. We had those money counting machines at the incubation center. The VP of Yes Bank used to sit there, and there were lakhs and lakhs of transactions every single day. We thought now is the time. We've shown a beautiful traction. Let's reach out to a couple of investors, and so we did. Now, the first rejection, the second rejection, the third rejection, and we talked to ourselves, something is wrong. We are making money, and we are not getting a claim. And there is where we came to realize that the VC wants to see in a founder who is living in the future. What you're doing right now is okay. What about 24 months, 25 months from now? And there is where I realized that there has to be something more which I am missing. And the fourth VC, when they came in, I told them we are no more selling student beds, though we were selling student beds. We said we are selling experience around it. We're selling we are selling those first laptops, these class 12th, and then they get into graduation, they want to buy. We are going to tie up with the Samsungs of the world. We're going to tie up with the Olas. We're going to tie up with all those ride-hailing platforms which can help all the student, other gyms or other parts which can help them, grow up. And there is where they saw the value of the number of transactions from a single customer again and again and again. That also brought us into the food business of the meals. So where I'm coming at is, and what I want to highlight here is that we value ourselves so less. If we really have right mentors across, and mentors, sometimes we also, tend to get a little bit confused when it comes to mentors. We pick up a phone and we say, this is the problem. Mentor is not here to solve your problems. You are there to solve your problems. Mentor is to show you the right path, the door. You figure out what would be the right way, because you need to be convinced, not coached. Right? So valuation, yes, plays a very big role. We need to understand what is the ecosystem we are in, what all lives we can touch, and more so, as I guess it was Prem who was saying that in the first session, to work for mankind. I think today the startup needs not only to solve the problem of a human, but humanity. And you see your valuation. That's how they sell Facebook, Yeah.
So on the valuation, thank you so much for that. On valuation, I just want to take a moment on very high valuations and why they could be a headache. While it seems great to get a great valuation up front, but please do note, once you establish that as the standard and that as the base, you have to go forward from there on. So whatever went into justifying a high valuation in terms of the opportunity, as you were alluding to, Ankush. It is important that you're able to live up to it, because you're not going to raise one round of funding and be done with. The intention is that you will be on a growth path thereafter, and you will be able to demonstrate what you said is what you did. So I would be careful in figuring out what is an appropriate valuation for my startup, depending on what is defendable, what is doable, what is happening. So while Ankush, you said that you hadn't really thought of beyond the beds, for example, and you thought of additional businesses, additional cash flows that could originate out of the same customer base, that is actually genuine value that could be created, which was what the fourth investor found interesting. So I would, and we have seen this even for very large grown-up startups, as I call them. I will not name any companies. All of you know what brilliant valuations they got when they went IPO. And they have faced very, very serious challenges in being able to maintain those levels of valuation. So as a young, early stage startup, it's good to think of what you can do, what you want to do. It's good to be able to articulate the art of the possible with respect to your own business. But it's also important to be pragmatic and to be practical and to remain answerable and accountable for the promises that you held out to yourself as well as to your investors. So it's just a thought that I would like to leave with you. I'm going to jump to Aditya to ask him if he has any thoughts to share when you're looking at investments, valuations.
Yeah. So they say if you want to get married, valuation is the terms on which you want to get married. And valuation is something where it's no rocket science. It's not even a commerce as well. It's a pure art, right? Because the terms of the marriage has to be convenient to both the husband and the spouse. It's not just participation from one side that you set the best valuation, you optimize the best valuation for yourself, and the other investor out there has to just take a bite on you. And a lot of good deals have gone down the drain because the investor wanted a set percentage stake in the company, right? And the valuation didn't work out. Because here, I understand it from the VC perspective as well. The economics would work out for them because they're looking at you as a multi-bagger return only if they have a sizable stake in your company. If you value yourself high and the VCs, of course, check size is not that higher to match up the high valuation, they end up being a minority investor in the company. And as much as, of course, we want to invest in founders, we want to work with them as well. Not just, of course, give our money and be on the back seat and, of course, not look at where the road is going. We don't want to be on the driving seat also. We want founders too because they know how to best drive the car, but at least every now and then we do want to see where the road is taking. So A is, I'll of course quickly finish this up because it's a topic you can go on and on. But I think what this whole funding winter has taught us is that it's never about the valuation, right? Because valuation is something which is always a substitute of value creation. If you focus in the long term on good value creation, substituting your customers, investors are not your customers for which you have to optimally price. But if you focus on your customer retention, your sales, your revenue, focus on the good basic fundamental aspects of your question, you would of course get higher valuation in the end. So it's not about 2% dilution here or 2% dilution tomorrow. It's actually about creating a $1 billion company. If you create a $1 billion company sitting out there, hardly a 0.1%, 0.2% here and there won't make a difference. But getting the right people with you on that journey is what matters. So please be open to it because this Mark Cuban says an amazing quote that 50% of a watermelon is better than 100% of a grape. So yeah.
I guess that says it all, huh? Really speaking. Subodh, I think Aditya alluded to what else one needs to look for when one is raising capital besides the money itself and the valuation at which you raise it. Perhaps you'd like to share with us, in your experience of working with startups and young companies at STPI, what have you found to be the most valuable, and again we're using the word valuable inputs that you've been able to provide or you have been able to facilitate for them with respect to their success in their entrepreneurship venture?
Sure, thank you, Kalpana. Well, I think, I mean, within the, probably for example, from my journey, from being MNC to startups and then to government, I've skipped the investor chain right now. But within the role of government, the role which we play is to bring startups investors together, right? And I think as you probably alluded earlier, happy to see this room filled with not just with startups entrepreneurs, but also with with the investor community here. I think in the morning session, we saw 35 plus investors sitting in the room, wanted to explore the startups and wanted to understand the startups and meet and greet everyone, right? That's a power today which we have achieved right now. Specifically coming to your question, what we have realized, startups and entrepreneurs, and I think probably Ankush, talked about, mentors playing a critical role, but they're not going to be, I think, I think we heard earlier also when the speaker said, the bridge between investors and startups is always the mentors. Mentors are going to help you to understand, to differentiate yourself from what you are trying to do. Every innovator, every entrepreneur, feels that their idea is the best, their execution is world class, right? And they are sitting on some visionary and idea altogether in which they can actually do something. But what they realize is something what investors are looking forward to, and that's the bridge which is filled in by the mentors. Mentors are there to guide you, to help you to understand and fill this gap. What is also more important is this whole journey in terms of idea to prototype to MVP, and MVP to product, right? How does that happen? And that's where STPI has played a critical role in terms of establishing what we call as centers of entrepreneurship, right? What we have done in centers of entrepreneurship is we realized, today we talk about startups being built from a home with a single laptop, for example, but these are not just the only startups, right? They're startups working in the electronic space, there's startups working on the EV space, there are startups working in telecom space, there are startups working in drone space, there are startups working in robotics space. They need much more than the software and the laptop alone, right? And that's the infrastructure which we in STPI have created. We have built world-class laboratories. We strongly believe within the government, within the STPI, to accelerate your development journey is one of the ways to ensure the investors come to you and you create value in time, before time, so that you have clear value where the investors look forward to, right? And that will only happen by virtue of accelerating your development journey. And that can only happen when you have access to right labs, right mentors, right? And both of these things we have focused upon. One more point that I'd like to address more is what we look forward when we talk about, within what we need to do. Within government and within STPI, we also want to continuously see what we want to do next, right? We always look into the drivers which are there available in the market out there, in the ecosystem out there, right? And today, if you see, the drivers are already there in the form of young and passionate entrepreneurs, young and youthful people, right? They want to do something, right? These are one of the drivers. Drivers also there in the form of technology, which is also being democratized to a larger extent today. Drivers are available in the form of digital, India roadmap, digital India report, which we have created today, released in the morning. These drivers are available, and what in government we should look into is, what are the challenges and how do we strategize in terms of filling the challenges. The challenges are there today, identifying real startups. Startup ecosystem is also having real startup versus just Me Too startups, right? Real startups and real investors. These are the challenges, right? There are data availability in terms of today, we hear, a lot of startups saying that we are doing pretty good in terms of financial, but there's no data availability in terms of what they're doing is what actually they are speaking as well, right? How do we understand that? These are challenges, and we, within the government ecosystem, look into creating, from these challenges, identifying what should be the strategy and action plan. And leap ahead, I must thank TIE team. I must thank all my partners here, my team in the STPI as well, because Leap Ahead initiative is born because of that strategic intent and strategic action in which we realized that startups are looking for the next level of funding. Ankit talked about a lot of early money being made available. I mean, it's available, it's still not available in a lot of places. But what requires further is an initiative like this Leap Ahead. And I'm happy that today we are seeing this great launch today in a summit event, and we will build this momentum from here, right, in terms of the new initiative, new actions. So that's a strategy, that's the action plan which we work on within the government ecosystem.
So you might have noticed I've been grinning ear to ear when Subodh was speaking. And what a glad day has come to pass that the government is actually pitching for active development of the ecosystem, pitching for startups and private enterprise, all of it is. So it's a real glad day. It really talks about where we have reached in our journey of entrepreneurship, I might say. Can I ask you a question, Ankit? Ankit, how would you say, if we have a room full of aspirational entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs, what would they, I have a pointed question, when they are raising capital, when they go out and approach investors, what should they look for? What should they be looking, not obviously the highest valuation, that is one conversation, but besides valuation, how do I know that he's a great investor for me? You know, how do I figure that? So if I'm lucky enough to have, as you were saying, there are lots of, you were also saying, there are lots of investors available, तो मैं choose कैसे करूँ कौन मेरे लिए better है?
Okay, so actually it's the other way around. I would say we are seeing a lot of startups building their products for investors. I would rather say build for your customers, and investors would come. Whoever is relevant to your domain, to your sector, they'll find you. If there is real value creation, as Aditya told, if it is available, if you are able to create that value prop for your potential customers and get them on board and do your POC, I think enough finding is currently going on where investors are now on the lookout for real startups to come and pitch to them. So I would say don't work. We have seen startups, for example, an AI fund has come in. They put AI in entire deck and then started reaching out to the investors. Wouldn't get anything because of just the AI in the name, in the deck. You actually have to use AI to actually solve a problem for the customer. So don't build for investors, build for potential customers, get the POC done, and investors will come to you, as is what we are seeing as well. So enough examples on that side.
Ankush, I am going to ask you a question which the investors will not like me for, but I'm hoping all the
That's why you're asking me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But the entrepreneurs
the
will
one
love
who's
it.
looking for funding.
Yeah. No.
Wow.
So I'm asking you, what are the two things which you would be very wary to see in a term sheet? What would you be very scared of seeing in a term sheet? What are the two clauses which would really worry you in a term sheet when you're raising capital?
Okay. So believe me when I say this, the whole term sheet is very, very terrible. You know,
All,
yeah.
I
You
agree
would
with
not
you.
like the term sheet, but you know, what happens is, I'll just give you, so there was this one of the, I would not name a VC. I had signed a term sheet, and I'm not saying SHA, it was a term sheet of 225 pages. Okay? Yeah, even I thought that may I go to toilet was somewhere written there. You know, it was that kind of a term sheet. Yeah. So I think one of the very important, again, as we just discussed about valuation, valuation, and I think the other one would be, you know, the rights of the founders. You have to be very, very careful about those, because what happens is, as Ankit rightly said, do not build for investors, build for the customers, the consumers, right? What happens is that these term sheets tend to, you know, drag you to that extent where you start working for these investors and you get those North Star matrices, you know, which eventually would not make any sense because the problem you're trying to solve is way too different than the term sheet, right? So I think that would be one, and initially you have to find the right kind of an investor. The term sheet comes in later. The investor has to be aligned to your thought. How I did or how I do it is same old fashioned way. I look for somebody who can help me in my business, and in turn they turn out to be investors in the long run.
That's right. That's right. That's what I've always said, yeah. So let me be provocative on that. Ankit, as it, oh God, why am I doing this? Aditya, no, I've been calling you Aditya. Aditya, as an investor, you know, he made a distinction, Ankush made a distinction between working for the investor versus working for your customers, shall we say, or working for your business. How do you view that as an investor?
So I view it positively, because if you're working for the customer, that means you're working for the investor. But there's a very thin line. So when we say we want to work with founders, it does not mean, of course, we want to call you, after every hour, hey, I signed this up as a vendor, please approve. Or hey, I've just calculating my provisionals, please approve. See, even we have invested in about 80 odd companies. Even if I talk to every company every day, that would take me about 2 months and 22 days, right? So essentially, it does not make sense, of course, that you talk regularly. Of course, you're building out for customers. You take strategic decisions in the interest of the customers and the business, as we say, right? And an investor is fully supporting on that. If an investor is not fully supporting on that, then it's not the right investor for you. That's why it's very important for founders as well to do investor due diligence. As much as we do a due diligence candidly on all of you, right? Without even you knowing the fact. Right? It's important for you as well to do a diligence on us in terms of the founders we have invested in terms of similar companies we have invested in. I mean, there are some founders, and I don't want to, of course, name them or blame them as well, but they blatantly sent their pitch deck without even looking at my portfolio, right? Now, if I've invested in a similar company, in a similar space, I might not take a bet again. What you're doing essentially is sharing out information, unsolicited information, confidential information to the investor. Of course, I would not share it ahead, but you are doing it from your end, right? So firstly, do your diligence very, very properly. Second, build it out for, of course, your customers. Keep your investors in confidence. That is one thing. The line that demarcates is a lot of people, they go so engrossed in the business that they don't consider investors as a part of the team. Yep. They consider investors as just another person who's given them loan. Right? We are not banks. We are not bankers, right? We are essentially partners in your growth journey. And if you don't share information with your partners, if you're not honest with your investors, if you're just sugarcoating things just for the sake of getting additional money, sooner or later you will be caught. And there are enough examples out there. So yes, build it out for the customers, but keep your investors in confidence. Make sure that you run something with them, right? You run past those things with them, those strategic decisions with them. At least they can be supporters, they can be patient listeners, right? If not provide value add in that sense.
So Aditya, to add to that, your investor is like somebody who's a sounding board for you for your strategic decisions. Your investor could well be somebody who could take you to your customer base, for example. They may have investments in another enterprise which have common customers with you, for example. That's just an example I'm giving. They may have connections into your supply chain, which would be of value to you. They may have connections into large customers. I talked about that. So they may be a potential, they could take you overseas, for example, because they have a business portfolio or their investment portfolio looks as if they might be able to take you overseas. There are possibilities that they have experts, subject matter experts from your space, which would be of value to you. So all of these perhaps are some things you would look out for. You may not get all from each investor, but it is of value. I would include it in my value matrix when I'm assessing which of the investors suits me better. Your objective investment, my last point, your investment objective and their investment objective, there needs to be a degree of alignment on that. If you're thinking, for example, that you're going to go IPO in 4 years' time and the investor is insisting you go next year and really your business is not ready to do so. This is just an example I'm giving. I think this is something you need to take a long hard at. Sorry, Aditya.
No, absolutely bang on. In fact, I was going to make this point. The reason you go to an angel investor is because, of course, capital is something that you want. But more than the capital, it's about the value that you want. Right? Because an investor does not give you pocket money. He teaches you how to make this money to more money, right? And the way he or she does that is, of course, opening up to the list of partnerships you spoke about. As in for us as well, we've created this whole bunch of ecosystem around us. Shivani is in fact here from my team who heads partnerships for our portfolio, where we provide these integrations, these payment gateways, these marketing agencies, PR agencies, tech development, all these integrations as a part of our service to our portfolio. And more than that, it's also about when you are entering into the portfolio of an angel investor, you are entering into the ecosystem because an angel investor has invested in mature founders like you. And one of the things that I want founders in this room to more focus on is talk to other founders. As simple as that. You listen so much in media, you listen to so many investors as well, right? And of course, you're chasing all that goes, but you don't talk to founders who've been there and done that, right? So invest in good founders, right? When you're traveling, invest in good travel and meet good founders in a community and learn from them on how they've narrowed down their journey. They might be in different spaces, but there is definitely some bit of commonality across every founder's journey. So learn from those founders and ask your angel investor to in fact connect you to these founders. Be shameless in connecting. That investor has taken a bet on you, the least you could ask is support. And in fact, you were saying about term sheets, make this a part of your term sheets. I've seen good founders. The good founders are those who basically negotiate on where an investor can add value.
Absolutely.
Rather than just negotiating on fair points of ESOPs and other things.
Absolutely, Aditya. Ankit, any comment from you before we open it out to the audience? Anything you'd like to add in your experience?
No, just on the term sheet part, I think, like Aditya mentioned, it's a marriage, and it's those 7 vachans that Pandit makes you do that, and you have to do that. So.
And valuation is only one of the vows.
Valuation is just one of them.
Absolutely. Subodh, I think you have something to say before we open to the audience.
No, I think we always look into, and I think when for startup entrepreneur we talk about, hey, what is your idea, what is your value creation, what is the, your business plan, right? And when talk investors, they talk about scalability, unique sell proposition, no Me Too kind of stuff, right? But not typically what happens is when we speak to a lot of startups, we talk about very clearly there has to be an ABCD plan. There has to be clear action plan in terms of what you are setting out for yourself, how you're going to achieve it, in terms of getting your solutions ready and out in the market, right? Test it with the pilot and get that out right now. That action plan has to be very clear and crisp, right? The second is the B, which we talk about in terms of business plan. I think it's very important to start thinking from day one that how you will make money, who is going to invest, who is going to fund you, but at the same time, if the fund is not coming, how you're going to survive from that perspective, right? That needs to be very, very clearly coming out from your own head. Mentors are going to be there, the community is going to be there, but as an entrepreneur, it's important to think about your own business plan. See what I typically tell a lot of startups when they meet me, challenge yourself again and again. Do not challenge yourself once. You think, hey, good idea, I'll keep on doing same idea, getting the implementation done. But unless you challenge yourself again, you will never be able to repivot or pivot yourself, based upon what you learn when you go out there, right? D, it's always thinking long term in terms of what disruptive solutions you're building. If you are focused entrepreneur, you are talking about building, billion-dollar company yourself, right? You are looking forward to attracting good investors. It's important that on long term, not from the day one, because on day one, disruption cannot happen, right? Disruption will only happen when you're invested into your own, journey. But you need to think about disruption at some point of time, right? That ABCD plan has to be very, very, very clear in your head, and that's what you need to work upon. Ecosystem is going to be there. Today, we should be happy within the Indian landscape, for example, right? I'm a product of service company, though I started my career with product company. Today, the service industry and the product company, the industry altogether has created huge pool of mentors sitting out, you can find everywhere. The investors, the mentors, everybody is the product of the same IT, revolution which has happened way back in 90s and 2000, right? We are all product of the same, and we have to build the next 20 years of what India as a country has to move forward to, right? So I think Leap Ahead and all these initiatives, and many more such initiatives will be targeted to fill certain gaps which we see from time to time.
Thank you, Subodh. On that note, shall we open out any questions from the audience? Please do raise your hands, and I guess somebody will raise you a mic. The gentleman in the front, if somebody could get him a mic, please. Please do introduce yourself shortly and raise your question. Identify the panel member you'd like to ask that of.
Hello. Yeah, so what I gathered from all the speakers on the dais is like there is complementary role. It's an observation. If you allow, I can say. Go ahead, very quickly. Ankit is providing the education and the basic support. And then again, Subodh sir is also like providing at the foundation stage, seed stage, the money, then the Aditya, he, he, he is helping, and the people like Ankush, they are giving the clear-cut pathway to move ahead. So
Thank you.
I think that's make the entire story very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. You've effectively done a thank you vote, I would think. Any other questions, please? At the far end, please, on the left. My left.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Shiv Rao. I am the founder of 3R Zero Waste and part of STPI Chunauti 4.0 as well. So my question is, as Aditya was mentioning, due diligence of the investor. So I have recently raised an angel fund. So what could be your tips and tricks? Because you have been in the game, each one of you. So what sort of due diligence other than, their past startups and their area of interest, what could be the other areas we should look at? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So one is, of course, you look at from a fund perspective, you look at what the portfolio history of that fund has been, right? Or what are some of the companies you can sort of target on if you become as a part of the portfolio of that investor, right? Be it how typically you take a feedback from founders, how is that investor founder friendly as well, right? And what is something that they like, what is something that they don't like. It's actually like going back to school and identifying who's going to take your first period, right? Identifying the teacher, right? And coming in good books of that teacher. Because, of course, if you come in good books, you get the first share at the reinvestment from that fund also. So one is that. Then on a personal level, essentially, I have broadly two diligences. Of course, I can't give you all the metrics one for even my homework. So first one is, I think from what is the background history of that fund as a person also, because just don't look at them from a fund, look at them from people as well. Have they worked somewhere? What could be some of the connections that can come out? And second is, which is thoda secret of mine, but of course, since you guys have been so good, of course, not taking my name properly, that's the only bad thing. But is actually look at what that person has been posting on social media, right? In fact, this is something that I've noticed. A lot of fund managers, every fund manager out there is active on LinkedIn. For me, myself, I've to ek din har roz LinkedIn post jata hai. So essentially, see what are the views that they're posting about, what are the stuff they're commenting. It's thoda bahut spamming also. And seeing what is some of the thought process that is going behind some of the views that they are posting or objectives or opinions. And I'm not saying change your opinions for that, but at least understand the person. This would help you a lot, massively, when you are in your pitch negotiations, when you're actually doing a live pitch with your investor. And also shows to the investor that you have actually done your homework very, very well on the person as well. And you're actually not just here, ki acha pitch tha, mereko kisi ne bola kar do to kar diya. So it shouldn't happen like that. So these are some of the tricks, I think, that can work out. More, of course, in premium edition, if you become a part of your portfolio, I can definitely help.
Yeah. And I think just want to add, right? I mean, there should not be any shortcut to due diligence. As an entrepreneur, you should be very clear about that. I mean, due diligence is very, very important part of investing. And I have seen, because today we have announced 103 investments in the morning session, right? And out of these 103, I have sat through, because I've heard from both sides. As I said, in STPI, we sit in between. We sit in other side, investors are there, other side, startups, entrepreneurs are there, right? An entrepreneur always says, hey, bahut question pooch raha hai. Investors will say, ye question puchna zaruri hai. I think it's important that, from an entrepreneur perspective, you should not be shying away from the due diligence process. The process itself will make you learn a lot. Let me tell you, because I've seen not just this investment cycle, which is we are doing right now. I've done, earlier as part of my own startup journey, we have seen enough journey in the last decade or so, right? Investors are looking forward to ensure, because they're also betting they're not betting their own money, right? A lot of time investors are fund managers. Fund managers are investing on behalf of someone else, right? So they look forward for real startups, the money which will grow. Obviously, they do take risk, right? But it's a risk which is a known risk, right? And I think Kalpana can talk about further. But it's important that due diligence, whole exercise, whole process must be seen seriously, right? And we have also learned a lot in terms of there is a lot of planning which lacks, because startups are busy in their own development cycle right now. They don't look into the numbers altogether. They don't present the numbers properly, right? And we look forward in STPI creating the mentorship around the financial aspect of due diligence, because that's a very important part of due diligence altogether.
So I think I'll go back to what we were originally saying, that finding an investor and an investee company is like a marriage. So you make sure that both the boy and the girl find out enough about each other. You know, you don't commit to a marriage without getting to know each other well enough and making sure that you have a right fit, as they say, you know. Any more questions? There's a gentleman at the back, right at the back, in the white shirt. Yes. Yeah, no, wait, one will go. Let me do that.
So, hi, this is Ayush from Rooms Vital. And at Rooms Vital, we are making IoT-based solutions for smart businesses and smart homes. So, my question is to Subodh sir. I want to ask that for deep tech startups, for instance, before building MVP, you are saying that we shouldn't be dependent upon grants. But isn't it necessary that till we don't build our MVP, and which requires funds, and if we are starting our entrepreneurship journey right from college, so shouldn't we be dependent upon the grants for this stage? First, if we start doing business, then it would be better to go for equity-based funding or loans or anything such.
No, what I meant was do not be too much dependent on the grant, right? Sometimes grants are important. The grants are important from the initial perspective of doing the early part of development, right? But what is more important is that, you know, both from friends, families, etc., you generate funds, invest into your own idea, right? Grants, especially one grant, maybe awards will come on your way. But what we have seen is, you know, we saw example of the few startups which have got one grant, then got into second grant, then third grant, fourth grant, fifth grant. What really happens is they're only burning money. They're not creating value out of that, right? So when I say, you know, grant is not a dependence, you know, you should not have a dependence in the grant, primarily meant from that aspect, right? What happens when you take an investment money, you look into what value you are creating from a single rupee which is invested in you. And you talk about yourself question whether this 1 rupee which is invested in me at certain valuation, whether I am growing my valuation, so the next money which comes in comes at a slightly higher valuation. Not to fall in the trap of valuation game, but so also important to create that value so that investors can, and then value creation will happen because you will need a driving force. And typically driving force comes from the investors who are going to be with you, especially the angels initially. It's important that you build that relationship, the trust relationship with investors, right? And then that's when you start growing your organization. You know, to think not from just innovation, but thinking of building an organization. And from that angle, grant money is not a money which any startup entrepreneur should really run behind.
The net point on that being that anything which is free is not valued. Really, that's the basic point. Yes, this young lady here.
Thank you so much. I'm Rajni Vashisht. I have a Section 8 NGO Literary Foundation. I have a question which I faced last 2 years. My Literary Foundation is a Section 8 NGO and it is startup registered also. So most of the time when I go for any kind of investors meeting or to the banks, they say that you are a Section 8 NGO, we cannot provide you loan. And when I look at the startup registration, then I applied for the different government policies also, like some grants or some funding opportunities also. Then they again this dispute come that yes, you are startup registered, but again you are a Section 8 NGO. So as this is a platform for the startup, and you have been discussing about all funding opportunities, I want this answer. Can a Section 8 NGO be a startup also? Can a startup be a Section 8 NGO also?
So one of the way could be, I'm sure I have my seniors here, they may have more ideas. One of the way could be you go through the CSR route. you are into education domain, there are so many companies out there who want to, who participate in CSR activities. You showcase what you are trying to, how you're trying to change it, and there is where you can raise some of those funds to begin with.
Then I have a query on this also. Like, as per the MCA, if you are a Section 8 NGO, there should be 3 years. You should complete 3 years. Then only you're eligible for the CSR. So this is the problem I'm facing, because I have the DPIIT also as a startup. So on that basis, I apply for the funding or the support. Then again, it is not acceptable by the investors. So yeah.
Ma'am, I suggest that as soon as we get off this stage,
yes,
you catch hold of the other people, not me,
okay.
and try and get to resolve your specific situation.
Yeah,
it's a
ma'am,
good
because
question.
this is the practical,
yes, please. Could I move
practical
to
thing
the
which
next?
I'm facing every day.
No, I appreciate, actually, I meant it seriously. I just say it frivolously, but I mean it seriously, because it's a very unique situation that you have. It's good if you get it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, this young gentleman there on the left.
Hello, I'm Ravi Agrawal from Macromancy. We are manufacturer for security alarm and security sensors from last 10 years. I have 2 questions from all the panelists. Do STPI help in the debt funding for the manufacturing factory, especially embedded electronics first? And second thing is that India don't have a very good laboratories like UL, FM and LPCB approvals in electronics specifically. And when we go to the ERTL laboratory, either north, south, whatever, either ISM, Mohali also, they don't have NABL approved laboratories. So if we apply for IS certification or any international approval, even we go for exporting in the Saudi Arabia, even MENA region also, they ask a very minor certifications, and India don't have a laboratory. And if we go for ERTL, they ask for 5 or 10 lakh rupees with a 2 or 3 years timeline to test the product. So it takes us so much time, and if we go for UL and FM approval, they give approval within 6 months, but they take 50 or 60 lakh rupees. So it gives a very huge setback to develop a product, then take approval, then go for manufacturing, managing the staff, and then managing the exports. So do STPI help on that?
Yeah, so first question on a debt fund, answer is no right now. We do not have any debt fund. We have created only this investment vehicle, which is Next Gen Technology Fund, which is a SEBI listed fund. And we do also invest directly into the startups today. But all the investment is in the form of equity or equity linked right now. So there's no debt fund. But what we do is we actually work with some of the leading banks and kind of bring banks to you, not from the debt fund, but from a debt perspective itself. They can actually speak to you because a lot of working capital requirement, right? Typically that's when you need a lot of lending. So there are a lot of banks which are now eagerly want to extend the lending to the companies which require that the lending portion, for example, right? On your second question, in terms of labs and certifications in particular, yes, we do not have a certification labs right now within STPI, but that's one of the mandate which we are working on. Now, how do we create a facility for certification, right? And my fellow director here is Ashokji is here, and we have within the EMC cluster scheme which we run, we are also trying to create mechanisms where I think there is a provision there. We just want to trying to accelerate that. And this will help to create the manufacturing certification lab infrastructure, and that will be made available not just to the industry, but to the entrepreneurs as well. Probably, 6 months down the line or a year down the line, when we sit together again, we will talk about those labs, that infrastructure which we have created, so that the certification process and the cost of certification especially, for a lot of products which are getting out of India, because the focus of any initiative today within MIT or STPI is product creation, and we realize that one of the barriers for the products getting into the market is the certification and the cost of certification. So we are working towards that, and sooner or later we will have a, as I said earlier, action plan, and show that action plan with some initiative. We'll come back to you on that.
Okay, last question. I was going to say no, but go ahead. The gentleman here up front, can somebody raise him a mic, please? You can speak up, maybe we'll hear. Okay.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Vineet Mittal, and I am a biotechnology student, and I am 20 years old. So I have just identified a problem in recent months of lack of practical exposure in small tier cities students. So I want to know from you, everyone on the dice or anyone from here, like what would you advise for me? Like I'm just starting out and I am a core biotech student and I'm planning to go in the entrepreneurship route. So what would you advise for me? Like what would be some words of wisdom you can give me, because you have gone through that route, and I would love to hear your experiences.
So, young man, my first response to you would be, as you go through your program, I think being agog of some of the wants or the needs or the ask that you could solve for using biotechnology as part of it would be the first principle. So if you'd like to get into entrepreneurship, first you need to identify what is it that people, consumers, potential customers need or want, which they will be willing to pay something for. So what is the problem or the requirement that you're going to solve for in this field of biotechnology? Keep yourself agog and keep a little notebook where whenever you get such a thought or idea that this is a requirement or this is a challenge or this is a problem that we can solve, make a list of those. From those, then identify which ones seem to look more realistic and perhaps, I shouldn't say faster, but possible to convert into a solution which customers or consumers will be willing to pay for. Have a list of these, test them with various experts, mentors, other founders, and see where and what you could take to the next stage. Once you have shortlisted, maybe 2, maybe 3, I can't say, then perhaps you will develop it a little more in terms of what your solution is, what your go-to market is, what is the back end that you need for it in terms of maybe supply chain, maybe development, whatever that you need. And thereafter, test those. You may test them sequentially, I would think, do one at a time, and you will definitely have a shot at, some success.
Yeah. So I'll just say like quick 10 seconds because I was kind of his age 6 years back and at a similar place. I think how you start, of course, what she said is extremely relevant to starting a business. Just एक चीज कहूँगा यार, age, entrepreneurship has no age, no time. When you start is the right time, right? Whoever you meet here, people are the best places to learn entrepreneurship. You learn from people experiences. Meet everyone in the room. Meet them with a smile. Greet them with a smile. Don't tell कि ठीक है यार age क्या है. Just say I'm here to learn and learn as maximum as you can. Take down their numbers if they give. Follow it up with a meeting, right? Write to them so that they don't forget you. And of course, do click picture with them as well so that they remember you always. And yeah, please keep doing this over and over and over again till you find your why of life.
So Aditya has made it even that I was calling him Ankit. He said that it was only 6 years ago, he was 20 years old. Mine was many decades ago, let me assure you. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being a very attentive and involved audience. We've really enjoyed having you guys here, and thank you to my panelists as well.
So I think this conference was more than just an ecosystem here. We went all the way from understanding the problem to innovating it to getting the funding to it. And I think thank you everybody who's been here, Subodh sir and the team, everybody, Kalpana ma'am. Now it's the memento time, definitely. So Kalpana ma'am, you have to give the moment. Okay, she's already doing it. Okay, fine. Perfect. Ritika ma'am is doing it. Amit. I think by the end of the conference now we can all clap well. There's literally some more energy. You've been very attentive and patient and very evolved audience, so congratulations for that. May I request Amit Bansal ji to give the moment? Geetika ji ko hi de do. Okay, Geetika ji, you can only give the memento to Kalpana ma'am. Very well. Let's have a group picture. So I think now it's time to give a round of applause to this excellent audience who's sitting here, to yourselves, to all the dignitaries who were present here, to all the partners, and now over to Subodh.
No, it's not over to me. And now it's a wonderful event. Thank you all for coming over here. And before we, get out from the room, I'll like to invite the whole TIE team on the stage, STPI team on stage, everyone who has been involved, for this program. Request everyone to come on stage for a group photograph. And I think huge round of applause for, the efforts by TIE team together, TIE Delhi, NCR, Geetika ji, led by Geetika ji and whole team there. And STPI, obviously, we have been trying to look into what we can do. So I request everyone from STPI and TIE, Nitin, come on screen, come on dais, please. Geetika ji and whole team. Amit ji, central khada pa raha. And yes, and the tea is there. So don't miss your high tea before you leave from here. But once again, each and every member of STPI and TIE team, each and every member of STPI and TIE team, please come on stage. Thank you.